Hi, and welcome to Hypothetically Intentional, where we ask the question, what if we set intentions with everything we did? I am your son, Andrew.
And I am your co host, Michelle.
Oh. So, for today's episode, I've got an article ready talking about grit. But
Hang on.
before we get into that, yeah. I
Ah.
was just giving him a little teaser. Gotta
Got it.
gotta
Got
tease him
it.
a little bit, you know.
We have this tendency to forget. So I was like, hang on, I
No,
finally remembered.
that's fair. That's fair. But yes, okay. Well, what do we have to do first, Mom?
We need to set an intention, son. And I set last time. So it's your turn.
I think our intention should be our intention should be to stay hydrated throughout this entire episode.
Okay.
That's not a very
That's fair.
Is that a good intention?
I mean, it's always a good intention to be hydrated.
Good. And actually, this is one that listeners can participate in. Go get a drink of water,
That's true.
listeners. If you haven't had your, what is it, 5 gallons of water for the day, you
Oh my
drink
gosh,
up.
that's too much water.
Well, I know it's always like a lot more than I think it is, so I'm just gonna overshoot now.
Okay.
So go shoot for 5 gallons. Carry around 5 milk jugs of water
No,
with you every
let's
day.
not tell people what to do.
I'm not a
with
medical
regard to
professional.
water drinking.
Don't
We are not
actually
medical
do anything I
professionals.
say.
And there is such a thing as too much water. We're not telling people to do stupid shit.
But that's like one of my favorite things, Mom.
I know. You and your brother play that game all the time.
Yeah, mostly to each other. Okay. Well, with that intention in mind, as I mentioned, my article is about grit. It's called "Practice Hard Work and Giving Up" by it's on Psychology Today. It's written by Jesse Marzik, PhD. And basically, sort of the thesis of this article is it's talking about this concept of grit, which is I think used a lot in, or at least used frequently enough that I think most people will understand what it means. But here, they have a very sort of specific definition, which is being able to. Actually, I'll just read the quote. He says, "Grit in this context refers to those who continue to pursue their goals when faced with obstacles, major or minor." So it's basically being able to persevere even in the face of difficulty. And I think a lot of sort of people make the claim that grit is like one of the most important things to succeeding. And there's certainly an extent to which that's true, according to this article. But it also sort of pushes back against the sort of ubiquity of that statement, and says that there are times when, you know, our resources in life are limited. We have finite time, finite energy. And I think if the message you take away from people telling you to like be gritty to succeed is that you need to always be 100% on your game and like chasing after every little thing that you do with like complete determination, they sort of say that that's missing the point a bit. Grit helps you succeed, yes, but grit alone won't take you all the way all the time. It depends on the goal you're trying to chase and whether it's worth it to you, and whether you're able to, whether it's something you can even do to begin with. This article sort of claims that there are some goals for some people that are just like so difficult or so improbable that it's just not worth chasing, and in that case grit can be a detriment. So it's sort of in the conclusion of this article is that determination and grit is really it's a precision tool. It's something you should use for the things that you really, really, really care about, and situations that are a good fit for using grit, but not necessarily for everything. So what do you think about this article, Mom? What do you think about that message?
So many things were going through my head, and where I landed at the end of it was, this is such a cool example, at least in my real life experience in the now, hearing you read that and how I was internally processing your reading of Grit. I've been thinking a lot lately about how absolutely everything we hear, every experience we have, all the things that we are receiving in this world, our natural tendency is to put it through our own filter of our own life experience. And that's what I was doing the entire time you were talking about Grit. Because where I started was, oh my gosh, when I was born, I held my breath through my whole first bath. The nurse told my mom and dad that, and I've been labeled as stubborn ever since. And I used to take offense to that. And then, I mean, fast forward, it was a bigger process than this, but like when COVID hit and my studio was shut down for 3 months, I was grateful for my stubbornness, and my stubbornness, my grit, is what made me decide that it was worth the struggle to keep going. And I literally had to like pause and use discernment to decide, am I even supposed to be doing this? Is it worth the fight? Do I even have a chance at keeping the overhead, the space and doing what I do, or do I have to completely revamp like it was the discernment. So I heard stubborn, I heard discernment, I heard being realistic, and I heard really knowing how much time and energy and other resources you're willing to put into something, and doing that from a realistic and also heartfelt point of view is sort of where I landed listening to that. I mean, I just thought it was going to be like about people who have grit and are willing to take risks and do the things. But it was so much more than that. And I actually really quite enjoyed the way you broke that down.
Yeah.
Do you have more to say? I feel like you look like you're ready to say something.
No, I think you just broke that down in a very good way, very similar to my read of the article, which may be influenced by the fact that I was paraphrasing it to you, but but yeah, no, I totally agree. Like I think a lot of times, like when I read this article, I had that same thought that you did, that, oh, this article is totally going to be like one of those things that just says, oh, just have determination and be gritty about everything, and then you'll succeed. But I appreciated the nuance that it offered, that isn't always the case, I think of, like, work smarter, not harder. That's, a fairly common phrase, but like, I don't know. I think a lot of the times, like, conversations about grit, or sometimes people can almost like, maybe this is too strong of a term, but like weaponize it and say, like, if someone isn't succeeding at something, say, oh, you just need to have more grit. You just need to stick with it for longer. But I don't know. I think that's sort of missing a lot of nuance. And there are certainly times where that's the case, right? There's certainly times where, sticking to whatever it is that you're trying to do for longer will lead you to success. But I think it's almost like I don't know. I think a lot of the most successful people are people who have figured out a really clever or even just lucky way of doing things, and then stuck with that and like applied their grit to that, and that sort of carried them to success. But I think, I think sort of like you were saying with discernment and managing your resources in this life, like our most valuable resources, time, and where you spend that is really important.
Yeah, I'm having this weird like third eye visual thing happening in my brain right now, or in my being right now. I'm going to say it that way. That I want to share with you, and I feel like you'll be able to help me unpack it and like say it better than maybe how it's going to start. Do you remember that scale that you had in your room that you had rocks on that you got into perfect balance? Or you
Yeah.
didn't have into perfect balance, but the rocks were heavier on one side than the other, and it was like this really cool, like, you know, the kind of scale I'm talking about. Am I describing it so
Yes.
our listeners would understand what kind of scale I'm talking about?
So think like the like Lady Liberty scale, like the two plates on a bar and they can like tilt up or down like that.
Yeah. So I'm picturing that, and it's just like I'm having this visual representation of said, you know, thing that you're going after, said goal, and then grit and how much grit it would take to be successful at this thing and bring the scale into perfect balance. And I'm not trying to like advocate for balance here because I know that's a tricky word for people sometimes. Like, is balance even possible in life, right? Like that kind of thing. But I'm just saying for the purposes of like grit and the goal. I'm thinking like, okay, so if I'm looking at this scale and one of it has like literally all of the Stonehenge rocks on the one side, and I look at that and I think, well, there's zero chance in this lifetime that I'm going to be able to move all of those by myself from point A to point B, right? Like that will never, ever happen. And then there's another, like, but a different person might look at the scale with, say, one boulder, but a boulder that's maybe manageable size that they could actually potentially move, especially if they call in other resources and help. But they look at that one boulder and they let it stop them and they say, no, I just don't think. Like, it's kind of like that. Where is your aversion? Where is your risk? Like, how big of a risk are you willing to take, or how much time and energy and effort are you willing to put into a thing? And at what point do you consider it unachievable? Because that's relative to everyone. And so I'm like just picturing that scale in your room just popped into my head. And I'm just thinking, you know, there was a time in my life where 3 little pebbles would have been too much for me. And sometimes in life, when you're like already weighted down and you have a lot of stuff, just to even consider moving one more stone feels impossible and you just don't have the gumption to do it. But other times in life, you're like, oh, this thing matters to me more than anything else. And I don't care if there's 16 big stones on there that I have to call in all of my resources to help me do this thing. I'll do it. But then where is that? Because some people are just, more willing to, at the expense of themselves, to achieve a certain goal. And then when they get to the goal, they realize it wasn't even worth it or it really was worth it, and then they're willing to do that again and again and again and even more so. I don't really know my point other than to say I think it's relative as far as what people are willing to, like how much grit people need to make an actual action.
Yeah, it's like it feels very much to me like a costs benefit analysis where and I think that the place where a lot of people, including myself, I think everyone struggles, or when they struggle, a lot of the time it's because of invisible costs or invisible benefits,
Mm.
where you don't see them and therefore you don't factor them into your calculation, quote unquote calculation. That's how I visualize it in my mind, but I'm a very mathy person. Um, but for example, opportunity costs are often invisible to a lot of people, and for if you don't know, an opportunity cost is what you lose by missing something else. So if I say they're giving out free samples at Costco, for example, they're giving out free samples of cheese, and I am late for a doctor's appointment. So I am like rushing through Costco, picking up all my groceries. I gotta pick them up before I go home, whatever. And there are two free sample stations. There's a free sample of cheese and a free sample of Gatorade. I don't know why those are the first two things that popped into my mind, but they did. And there's a line in front of each of them, so I only have time to go to one of the two lines. Well, for a lot of people, you might think like what is the cost of getting in the cheese line? Well, a lot of people might say, well, it's free. It's a free sample. There's no cost. You're not paying anything to get that cheese. But in reality, you are paying something because you're missing out on the Gatorade. in this example. This is a very simplified example, but it's the sort of situation where I think the biggest case where this comes in is much like this example, time. You only have so much time in the world. So if you like spend a summer or traveling or spend a year traveling, between like school and work, for example, that I think that's a great thing to do. There's lots of benefits to that, but you also need to factor in not only the cost of the money that you're paying for your trip, but also all of the time that you're spending that you could have spent, say, working or building your other hobbies or whatever. So this is not to say that you shouldn't travel, but this is just to say, like, when you make that decision, you should take into account all of the costs and all of the benefits. So that's just one example of the sort of invisible cost, but sometimes things are more like directly just like, I don't know how much this is going to cost me. I don't know how difficult this is going to be, this endeavor that I'm going down. I don't know how much time it's going to take me to learn piano. I don't, and then the benefits can also be invisible. Like, for example, traveling, like you might think the benefits are, I'm going to learn a new language and be immersed in this new culture and have these life experiences. But I don't know, maybe you also end up like meeting someone who's really important and becomes a really valued friend or significant other in your life. And like, maybe you are inspired to write a book while you're traveling. Like there are so many, I don't know, like, at least for me, like, that's the difficulty with choosing where to apply your grit and where to apply your resources and your time in life is you have to, or you don't, I mean, the goal is to make an accurate judgment of everything you're going to get from it and everything you have to put into it. And that's really, really hard to do. Is that what you were sort of like, I don't know, I might have just gone off on a tangent there. Is that...
No, I think that's true. And I think that I think we often overlook some of the simplest things that are actually valuable that we don't factor into what we're considering when we're using our discernment. Like, I think that's what you were talking about, on a lot of different levels. I think it was interesting because when you were talking about opportunity, I was all like, at first I was like, well, yes, you're missing out on the Gatorade. And all I could think is, yes, and the time wasted standing in line.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's like, but some people don't think about that, or that they could have got to the doctor's office early and maybe just once for once they were early and you saved time and could do a different thing. And yeah, I mean, time is such a valuable resource, but it's interesting too, because when you were talking about time and travel and all of those things, as a business owner, I often will only look at the monetary, like when I'm factoring in, like, it's easy for me to give my time. It's free. It doesn't cost me anything. But the reality is me giving my time is actually the most expensive resource that I could possibly give away, because if I'm not investing that time into the business to bring in more. I mean, not that it's all about money, but like it has to be sustainable. And if I'm only donating my time over and over and over again without an exchange of money at some point, like, it costs me, and you don't realize that until you get so far into that you're like, oh crap, I haven't taken a payment for, like when I first started out, that was one of my biggest like downfalls. I forgot that like my time is literally money, but that's true for everyone, even if you're not a small business owner. Because you can, use it for different things. But I thought that was interesting. The other thing, as you were speaking, and I don't know why this really popped into my brain, but I was thinking about, again, that scale and how, as we're using our discernment and trying to decide and choose where we want to invest our time and our resources and where we want to put that grit in, so many times we don't celebrate those little wins of the process along the way that are huge toward, like, they're the biggest pieces of your grit, but they're so small in the grand scheme of things that we don't realize it. And we just spend the whole time like grinding in the grit, instead of like, there can be more joy in that process of the grit. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's actually a perfect segue into what I was going to say is my one big sort of problem with this article, and that's how it defines success. it has a very unilateral idea of success as you achieve the thing you set out to achieve. You get the job you wanted. You make money. You whatever. Like but like for me, success is very much something that happens along the way, that is built along the way as part of the process. And I see, like, that seems like, it sounds like you're very much in agreement there.
Yeah, I think when we set goals, if you're a person who, like, I enjoy the grit, I enjoy the stubbornness, I enjoy the process of doing the work to achieve whatever the next goal is, but the goals aren't the success for me. The process and the like, I change the goal as I achieve a goal because I want another thing to work toward, to strive for, to dive into. But like, success to me is, do I have the freedom to spend time with my boys? Do I have the freedom to travel with my partner and my boys and loved ones? Do I have financial freedom, right? Like, there's just so many different, like, success for me isn't like a defined thing that I'm going to take out of one side of a scale and put it to the other side to create some sort of balance. Success for me is, am I in service in a positive way to the world? Am I able to spend time with the people that I love? And if you really want to simplify it, like, that's it. Like, I don't like the rest of it, whatever, but I think it's so easy for us to make things more complicated and to push ourselves down and to take resources away or discount resources that are actually the most important ones that we just don't look at because they're not tangible, like you said, right? And yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Hydration break.
Hydration break. You making it slurpy? Can you make it slurpy? Like, really
oh no,
loud?
I'm going to cut out my slurping noises because nobody wants to hear that.
I'm gonna choke. I tried. It didn't work. No, that was actually cool. I like it. I think everyone's definition of grit and what would stop them within their grit is different too. And I also find that fascinating and delightful. I like that we're not all. Can you imagine if we were all going after all the things all the time?
Yeah.
No,
that would not be very. That would not be very good, I don't think.
No.
Yeah. Awesome. I feel like we should end, like, I don't know if we should do this. I don't necessarily think we should do this every week, but I feel like, just like the way our conversation has moved, I feel like we should end with another intention here, like moving forward for our listeners for the coming week and forever, and for ourselves too.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I have one. Do you have one? I think they're the same.
They're probably the same. What's your intention?
Should we say it together?
Oh, there's no way that's gonna work. There's
no way
that's gonna work. Okay, we can. I don't have it formulated into a sentence in my head yet. Give me a second. Okay. Yeah, I think I've got one.
Okay.
I think our intention. Ready?
Our intention.
We'll say it at the same time.
Okay.
Our intention
is to celebrate. Celebrate.
To see the. We'll both just say it at a normal speed. How about?
Okay.
Our intention is to see the.
Celebrate.
See.
This is not working. You say yours first.
Okay, I was just gonna say it would be to see the invisible, intangible joys and benefits in everything we set out to do.
Yeah, and that's the same thing as I was gonna say. Only I was just gonna say it to celebrate things that I don't normally see. Yeah. To find ways to. So I said it less clear than you. I actually like the way you said it better.
You said it much more succinct than I did.
I did, but it's not as clear as yours.
Well, audience, vote on which one you like better.
That's perfect. And while you're at it, in the voting, sending us a quick email kind of a lane, like, subscribe, follow. You can email us at info@jaidee.wellness.com. You can find us on our website at jaidewellness.com. And Instagram, Jaidee Studio, Facebook, Jaidee Wellness. Those are probably the main ones. I don't think, well, I do have a YouTube channel, but I can't remember if it's wellness or studio because my names are different in different places.
Alas. But you can find it on the website for sure, right?
You can for sure find it on the website, yes.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye. Be you every day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.